All right. Hello. On this video, I want to talk to all of the creators out there that do serialized comics, but have the goal to ultimately collect them into a trade collection, a trade paperback, a graphic novel, something with a spine. And specifically, this video is going to be all about at least a dozen ways. I'll probably end up giving you more than a dozen ways to add value to your trade collections so that even fans, even like your biggest fans that have already ordered and read the series and have, every issue of the series in single comic book form. Maybe they even have variants of every issue in comic book form. But how do we make it so that even those fans still want to come back for that trade collection? That's the topic today. And so if you're someone that has launched a trade collection before, love to share that in the comments, or if that's something that you plan to do eventually, you hope to do, it's a goal, let me know. Leave a comment, and I look forward to checking those out. My name is Tyler James. I am the publisher of Comics Tribe. Comics Tribe is a publisher of comics, graphic novels, and children's books. And we also do some toys and some other cool merchandise as well. I'm also the host of Comics Launch, which is a show for creators talking about how to build audiences and launch awesome projects to them on Kickstarter platform and beyond. And so this is definitely a relevant topic to the members of the Comics Launch and Comics Launch Pro communities, and all of the comic creators out there that I know. Trade collections are one of the most fun things to do. It's also an area of what I consider my own personal expertise and interest. This is just a small stack of some of the trade collections that I've had a hand in publishing and putting together. I'm sort of at the point now where I don't even know how many trade collections I've done over the years. So that means I've been in this game for a while. And I've put just about everything that I'm going to share with you into practice. And so I hope you'll get a ton of value out of this little mini training session. Before I do that, though, I did also want to just mention that I do have a Kickstarter that is funding right now. It is a book called Wailing Blade. It is a dark sci-fi fantasy series. It's by Joe Mulvey and Rich Douek. And Wailing Blade is sort of, you can imagine, Masters of the Universe in a Mad Max world. That gives you a little taste of what's there. We'd invite you, if you're interested at all, head on over to the Kickstarter page. We've got full previews on it, lots of art. It's really a sensational book. We are heading into the home stretch, 56 hours to go. We still got a little funding. This is the biggest goal we've gone after for our graphic novel projects, $30,000 goal. It's going to be a fight to the finish, but we're really excited to make that happen. And if you've been watching the campaign, we actually, something really cool. Rich Douek just put up 20 copies of his new book, Sea of Sorrows. The first issue hits the stands today, and it's from IDW with art by Alex Cormack. Rich has copies, his comp copies. He's signing comp copies and including the full PDF script of Sea of Sorrows #1. And this is available as an add-on over at the Wailing Blade Kickstarter. So that was just something brand new that we added as we go into the home stretch. So would love to have your support there. If you've got value from these trainings, if you've got value from Comics Launch in the past, we would love to have you jump in and become one of the awesome 426 and counting backers for the Wailing Blade Kickstarter campaign. All right, that's my my Wailing Blade plug. But now what I want to do here is dive into the meat of today's topic, which is going to be all about how we can add serious value to your trade collections so that even your fans that already own the series will come back and want to add that book to their collection as well. Before I give you the dozen or so ideas that I have for you, and I'm sure you have ideas, and feel free to, in the comments, share some of the things that you're seeing, some of the things that make you as a creator really want to jump in and grab that trade collection, even if you've already bought those single issues. But I want to address two common questions or that creators I know have had. I know because these creators are in the communities. I listen to you all. These are things that come up again and again in for creators. I was like, okay, and so the first one is, well, should I do this at all? Let's say I've already launched all of my issues either on Kickstarter or released them in single issues. My fans have read the whole series. Is it even worth it to bother launching a graphic novel collection, or should I just move on to like my next project or the next volume? And like, is it really worth it to launch a graphic novel collection? All right. And so my answer to that is absolutely it's worth it. Absolutely it's worth it. This idea that because your fans have already read something, therefore they will not buy it in a new format or buy it in a collected edition is ludicrous. The easiest example of this is the webcomics example. If you look at Kickstarter, most of the biggest comics of all time were all webcomics first. And that's an example of a fan base that has been reading this thing, not just reading it, but reading it for free in most cases online in some cases for years. But even though this has been in their world, even though they've read it for free, it's a different experience to jump in and back a launch for a collected edition. The other thing that I will just also say is, and something that we're going to get into in my ways to add value, is that it's a different, you're potentially appealing to a different market. I know that there are some comics that I want to read in single issue comic form. There are also some storylines that I want to read in a bigger, meatier chunk. I want the whole thing. I have never in my life have I purchased a Walking Dead comic book, for example. But I'm a huge Walking Dead fan. The way I like to consume The Walking Dead has been in the format of the oversized hardcover collections that collect 12 issues at once. And so if Robert Kirkman had never released those hardcover collections, who knows? And I had never started reading them that way. Who knows? I might have never read any Walking Dead. And so the graphic novel collection will just putting it together, creating that as a separate product is always going to be valuable because it's going to get you in front of a whole new market, particularly those that love the graphic novel collections. All right. So that's the first question. Yes, it's definitely worth it to launch a graphic novel collection, to release even if you've already put it out in single issues, to release it in a collected edition. The second question that I hear a lot, and this is something that's more strategic, might be for those of you creators that are using Kickstarter and you're putting out single issues and you're launching single issues on Kickstarter. Well, what tends to happen is a lot of creators will, let's say they have a 5-issue series, right? A 5-issue mini series, and they launch their first issue on Kickstarter, and then they launch their second issue, and then they launch their third issue, and then they launch their fourth issue, and now their 5th issue is coming up. And a lot of times creators are like, should I launch the 5th Kickstarter campaign? Should that be for the 5th issue? Or should that be for the graphic novel collecting everything? Or should that be for the graphic novel and I will also make it for the 5th issue? So backers can choose to get a graphic novel collection or the 5th issue. So that's one way to do it. Or the other option would be, should I launch it a 5th issue? And should I then come back maybe a few months later and launch a graphic novel collection? Now, reality is I have creators in the Comics Launch Pro community that have done it all ways. And the thing that I'll just say is there is no right or wrong answer here, but the answer that you choose, the decision you choose, will produce different results. And so it'll come down to, a decision, but know that your decision will produce different results. In general, the more launches you do, the more total funding you'll raise, the more total fans you will reach. Now, that doesn't mean to say that by doing a combined, let's say a combined 5th issue and graphic novel launch, That doesn't mean that that launch wouldn't be bigger than, say, if you just did it for the single issue or the single fifth issue of or the final issue of your series. But it most likely would be bigger. However, if you are comparing that to doing multiple launches, the multiple launches is going to raise the most funding and is probably going to get you in front of the most total backers, because every time you launch, you are getting you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're doing, you're stretching all of your promotional muscles. You're getting you're shouting like a megaphone. You're getting your product and your IP, not just in front of your existing fans, but also in front of a lot of new fans. And when you do it on a platform like Kickstarter that has a lot of tools available to creators like us that for cross promotion, and if you back one project, you start getting recommended by Kickstarter's recommendation engine to see other projects. If you can start getting your project served by those other in that recommendation engine, you're going to get in front of a whole new audience. And so the more launches that you do, what I'm seeing is creators that will break it up into more launches will tend to raise more total funding, build a bigger audience, and make it easier to launch bigger even the next time they launch. And so more launches does tend to equal more funding. And then the other thing is that the more products and print runs you have to do in a given launch, that tends to mean the lower your margins are going to be. And so if you try to do one of those combined launches where you're doing a new print run for issue number 5 and also doing a print run for the graphic novel, yes, you will be potentially saving a little bit on shipping, but that's a whole print run you have to do, and those are 2 separate print runs, and that can usually be costly. And so the approach that I would recommend you consider doing, if you've been serializing your book all along, would be to continue to do that. Serialize each issue as individual issues, and then come back a few months later and put out a collected edition, but use some of the strategies that I'm about to give you to make it so that you are adding value to your collected trade edition, so that even fans that have supported all of your previous Kickstarters for the single issue, they have no choice. They have to jump back in and support that final issue. Okay, so let's talk about this. That's the topic that I want to talk about today. I see we've got some awesome people in the crowd. My man Rob Motari knows a thing or two about doing trade collections over here. Brett Giuliano's in the house. I have a number of Facebook users. I can't see your name, but good to have you tuning in here. All right. How to add genuine value to your trade collections so that even your most diehard fans come back for more. Well, trade collections, definitely a true point of pride for me here at Comics Tribe. I'm not sure exactly how many I've done at this point. I'd have to go count them and check my library. But one of the things that I always try to do is I try to think about and spend some time and some creative energy looking for ways to add value to whatever trade it is that I'm producing, or whatever trade it is that I'm working on with other creators, to make it the best possible version of the book that I can. Now, the 2 main things that I'm going to talk about in terms of how you can add value for your trade collection is going to be format and content. Okay. And so between format decisions and format things that you can do and content decisions that you can do, that's going to give you over a dozen ideas that you can apply to your next launch. Now, what do I mean by format? Format, I'm talking about the delivery system. All right. The details and specs of the book itself. All right. So format decisions, format features are going to be sort of non-story, non-creative sort of features of the format of how the book arrives. All right. And one of the things just worth mentioning and being clear about is that like putting your existing story content into a new format alone can be reason enough to launch. To give a non-comics example, the Star Wars trilogy, we remember way back when the Star Wars trilogy was re-released. Well, the going from film to sort of digital, like that was reason enough to release a new version of the Star Wars trilogy, to experience it for a new generation in a new format, right? So that's one example there. And so let's talk about some format reasons why that you can add value to your trade collection. All right. I'm going to talk about the most obvious thing and the simplest thing first. The most obvious and simplest thing is simply the fact, number one, the fact that your trade collection has a spine that in and of itself is reason enough to launch a trade collection versus just sticking with single issues. All right. And as we talked a little about a little while ago, people that collect trades are often, and trade waiters and graphic novel collectors may be different than your single issue comic collector. All right. It may be a different market and would reach a different market. Where you store a trade collection for most of us is a different place than than where you store your comics, right? I have in that closet behind me, I've got a couple of bookshelves full of graphic novels, like they're fully loaded, spine out, right? Whereas for my, single comics, most of them are in long boxes, right? So it's different, all right? And so the spine itself, just getting a book collected, the spine itself, and the fact that that is reason alone, can be reason alone to launch a graphic novel, all right? Now, what else can you do above just putting a spine on the thing to make this trade collection be more valuable and get people to come back? Well, one of the things that I really love to do, I mentioned it with with Walking Dead, but I've also done this in a number of our book collections. I tend to do this for Ultimate collections. I like bumping the size of the book. So right here, this is Chum, and Chum was done at standard comic size. Compare that to Scam, which is done at that oversized format, right? And there is just something different and kind of cooler about getting a comic with a much bigger page. This is a Scam by Joel Mulvey. It's a Comics Tribe published book. It's just bigger, right? Like, I love Invincible is another one that's at that massive size, right? And honestly, like, I love Ryan Otley's art and these double page spreads, right? At a massive size. It just changes how you experience the book in a way for the better. So you can make the size of your book, just bump up the size of your book, and you can make that one of the key selling points that would make people want to grab your trade collection. And the cool thing is especially when you're printing at volume, is that the size of the book doesn't dramatically increase what it costs to ship it or what it costs to print it. Now, it will increase that, but compared to the bumping up the size doesn't, exorbitantly like adding 20% to the size of the book doesn't come anywhere close to adding 20% to the size of the total cost to produce the thing. And so that can be a good decision from a business standpoint, is just bumping up the size, and there's another value add. All right. So let me know, what's your favorite book? What kind of size do you guys like? And speaking of size, Brett Giuliano, he's sort of gone the other way, and you can go the other way sometimes, right? He said his volumes have been little half sheet booklets, but with the trade, he's going to bump it up to 6x9 perfect bound, right? Absolutely. All right. Now, the third format option, or the format and again, way that you can get backers to get excited to come back for your trade collections, is to do specialty cover enhancements and features. Okay. Now, I geek out over this stuff. I'm a 90s kid. I grew up when there was the conversion from old school coloring to digital coloring, and people were doing enhancements with paper stock and covers, and they were coming up with gimmicky covers, and I ate all of that stuff up. And fast forward, many years later, I'm still eating all this stuff up as a creator and a publisher. All right, and so what are some cover enhancements and features that you can do to your books? Now, a lot of these can be done in both soft cover and hardcover. So things like foil, you'll see like foil stamping. That's something that can be done on your soft covers. It's also something that can be done on your hard covers. And in fact, we actually did this. This is the standard by John Lees and Jonathan Rector. We actually used a foil paper stock so that the entire thing was done in silver foil stock. And for Wailing Blade, we're actually going to use this same stock and have the blade be printed on this foil stock. And then we're doing an additional cool thing to it that I'll talk about in a minute. But foil is an example of a special cover enhancement that you could do. Another one is Spot UV. I've got Russell Nolte's recent collection of Cthulhu is Hard to Spell. And as I'm shaking this, you can probably see how the baby stands out a little bit. He also did it, I think, on the back cover. You see how like the blocks here, they stand out a little bit. And that's because a Spot UV treatment has been placed over certain elements on the book. And then the other elements don't have that. And so when light hits it, it makes it shine. All right. The cool thing about these cover enhancements, in addition to giving you selling points to your backers, is that they also make your book at conventions pop up off the table and really attractive. And I know Russell, in a world where there are conventions, and knock on wood, let's hope they come back in 2021. To a significant extent. But I know Russell moves a ton of books, and part of the reason is because he's got tricks like cover enhancements, like Spot UV, that help those books really jump off the shelves and help them sell themselves. All right. So another thing that you can do as a selling point, which has been pretty popular lately in the world of comics, is you can do a virgin cover. All right. Virgin covers are covers without all the copy and the treatment and everything else. And so this is one we did for Sync. It's a virgin cover right here. Another thing that you can do would be to do a wraparound cover, right? Wraparound. So again, pointing out all of these Invincible trade collections have a wraparound cover image that's sort of a connected image with the front cover and the back cover collected together. Another thing that you can do, speaking of this one as well, is a dust jacket. All right. I've actually never printed a book with a dust jacket, but I always get them bent up and rip them up and lose them. So I'm not a huge dust jacket fan, but I know some people are. So that's an option that you can do. And then final one that I want to talk about, and one that I've been geeking out seriously over lately, is the die cut. I know my man Rob Multari just did a die cut hardcover for his Night Wolf, and we just did earlier this year this die cut cover for this book She with Ryan K. Lindsay and Chris Panda. We had this high concept for making a layered effect, showcasing this character She's helmet and sort of mask skull thing. And so right there is a die cut on here. But what I also want to say, so there's some examples, all right? And if there's more that you're thinking of, go ahead, but I'll just recap those specialty cover enhancements and features that I just went over. We have foil, we have Spot UV, we have doing a virgin cover, we do have doing a wraparound cover, doing a dust jacket for your book, and doing die cutting. So these are all different kinds of enhancements that you could do. And the other thing that I will say is these can be really special when you start combining these things. And so this cover right here actually has 3 enhancements. It has the foil stamping for the title. It has Spot UV on this character head to sort of add some extra shine and depth. And it has the die cut. Okay. And so what we're doing with the Wailing Blade, which is a Kickstarter that's live right now, is we're combining some elements that we've done before. So we're going to combine the foil stock that we did with the standard here, and that's going to make the foil blade. Okay, this is going to be a foil enhanced stamped for the title, like we did here, and we've got a die cut that's going to be right here, so that you can see through. And then on the interior page, there's going to be our two characters sort of going head to head. And then the other thing that we're going to do, it'll depend if we hit some stretch goals or whatever, is you can see this pattern in the back. I want to drop a spot UV on all of those foil or on all of those icons that are sort of the icon pattern. I'd love to drop a spot UV on that just to give it that extra oomph. Hopefully we'll hit that stretch goal. But we got to get funded first. So again, if I'll just take this quick moment, if you like these videos, if you're a fan of Comics Tribe, if you're a fan of Gorgeous Collections, we would love to have your support over on Kickstarter. We've got 56 hours to go, got a little bit of funding to do. We've got some tricks up our sleeve still to do it. Would love to have your support on Kickstarter. All right. So those are the three main things that I wanted to talk about on format. And if I missed something, if there's a format thing that you can think of that you've seen that's cool, go ahead and add it. This is, I'm going to give you a dozen options here. I'm going to give you at least a dozen things that you can think about for your trade collections, but this is not meant to be an exhaustive list of things that you can do, but a great starting point. I hope this gets you some ideas, going. And I don't know who put this, but someone said, my head is so big, I couldn't put my face in the sheet cover. I'm not sure who that is, but that made me laugh. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, unfortunately, this doesn't come in extra large. All right, so we talked about format things. We talked about this, just the fact that it has a spine. We talked about that you can vary the size and make the size bigger or even smaller. We also talked about some special cover enhancements and features that you can do. But now what I want to get into is something that is equally, if not more exciting, and this is content. All right. Now, what I mean by content is the creative content that's included in the books. These are extras. These are new and exciting features and additions and extra content that you can put into the book in order to make it so that it is its own product, has unique selling points, and is something that people will want to see. Again, to use a non-comics example, let's go back to Star Wars. In addition to re-releasing the original trilogy now on digital, the other big selling point was that Star Wars remastered the original footage, Lucas went in, chopped it up, re-edited it, added new footage, used new advanced special effects that weren't available in the 70s and 80s. He had, Han shooting first, or maybe he didn't, let's not get into that debate or that argument. But that was another selling point. Hey, people would show up for the new content, the new effects. And that in and of itself is a reason to go experience this thing again. All right. And so I'm going to hit you with at least 10 things that you can do from a content perspective that would add value to your trade collections. Now, the first one, again, though, much like the first one for format, was just the simple fact that you have a spine. The simple fact that your trade collection contains the complete story or volume or arc is in and of itself enough to get some fans to want to own it. I mean, there are stories like that I've read in single issues, but the idea of going and digging up and finding those single issues and reading them in that format, and if we're talking Marvel and DC, having to flip, and then here's your freaking Twinkies ad in between, and random ads for movies and video games that are long outdated, like that chops up that experience. So the idea that you can get a trade collection that's ad-free, that contains the complete story and has, one full complete story that I can just grab in a spine, throw in my backpack for trips, read on, and read in different places. That in and of itself is a value premise and can be reason alone for you to join or for you to launch it as its own product. All right. So that's one. Now, another thing that's very common is to do cover galleries. So in the back of your book, adding additional content and to have a gallery of all of the covers that were included in the single issue series run. Many series out there release the book and then have variants. Sometimes the variants are for, the first issue has multiple variants. Sometimes there's store variants. Sometimes there's convention exclusive variants. And variants for single issues can be a good way to sell more copies and make additional, margin on the book itself. Also get your fans to collect it as opposed to just reading it. But very few fans have access to all of those variants and will buy them all. And so the trade collection can be a great opportunity to collect all of those covers into one spot. And so for Comics Tribe books, we usually will do at least 2 covers for every issue. And often the first issue will have more than 2 covers for, series that we're really going hard and trying to launch and make a big deal of. We have Happy Hill coming up. Happy Hill will have more than 2 covers. And then subsequent issues will probably have 2 covers. But the trade gives us an opportunity to collect them all and feature them all in the trade. Wailing Blade #1 had, I believe, 10 variant covers. We got a little crazy there. But what's nice about the new Wailing Blade collection, which is on Kickstarter right now, comicstribe.com/Wailing Blade, is that you'll be able to see every cover that we did for this series collected in the volume. All right. So the third content thing that you can do is pinups and sketches. I've always loved in the Invincible collections. There's all sorts of pinups and sketches that Ryan Ottley includes. He tends to include shots of like the commissions that he does at conventions, or people have him doing sketch covers and other things, and he'll take a little snapshot or scan those in and include those in the trade collections. And so you get to see like all this amazing work. All right. And alternatively, pinups, a lot of times there will be fans that will do fan art, or there will be other pros that are your friends or are your peers that either you can pay or will just do a swap, or they'll just surprise you with a pinup of your character or characters, and you can include those pinups in the cover in the trade collections, and that adds a lot of value as well. I know fans like to see those. Another piece of content that you can add into your trade collections and graphic novels is you can add your script and your process materials. I've always enjoyed seeing, and again, going to my Invincible example, just seeing how Ryan Ottley's original pencils look and what his process goes. Another thing he includes that I love is the rejected covers, and sometimes the snarky comments from Robert Kirkman about why certain covers were rejected or why they didn't go a certain way. Another thing that we often like to see and that we included in the She collection, in addition, so here's some pinups. But Ryan also did, Chris Panda showed like original character designs, right? And did a page of character designs, and also showed some cool models that he used for his art process. And I know that fans really do appreciate getting an inside look at how these books are made. I know that there are some trade collections that include samples of, or in some cases, the complete scripts for certain books or parts of scripts or parts of books. And I know for all the writers out there, That's something that they really do enjoy. We actually decided not to, for the Wailing Blade collection, we decided not to include the full script in the Wailing Blade collection. But what we did decide to do was to create a new version of Wailing Blade #1, where you're going to get side by side the script and then Joe Mulvey's line art for that script, among some other things. I'm also including the original pitch that Rich Duick sent me years and years ago. It was like a 1-page pitch. I had just rejected like a dozen pitches from other people pitching stuff to Comics Tribe. And then Rich sent me this 1 page and I'm like, we have to make this thing happen, green light. And so I'm gonna include that pitch in there. Also some concept sketches and other things from Joe Mulvey. And so we decided to make this like a separate thing because the page count on the Wailing Blade collection was actually getting up there. And we really wanted to go and make this really like a true collector's item for all the creators out there. So Wailing Blade Creators Edition is available as a standalone pledge on our Kickstarter. It's also available in a package deal, and it's included in the Wailing Blade Head Takers collector's box, which is sort of the premium collection that we have there. So again, comicstribe.com/Wailing Blade. Would love to have you there. There's a lot of stuff in here for creators that I think you're going to dig. And so definitely check that out. All right. So we talked about having the complete story. We talked about cover galleries. We talked about pinups and sketches. We talked about script and process materials. I'm going to take a quick drink, check my comments here. And yeah, it's interesting. Some of the things that I'm seeing is that some fans are saying that they actually love certain things. Like some fans like the digest size. Some fans like the oversized, like myself. Reality is the more sizes, the more options that you tend to, that you can offer, the more of the market you have an opportunity to capture. And so if you've launched at full size, at oversized, who knows? Maybe in the future, a digest size might give you an opportunity to launch yet another time. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to call out is including a foreword. All right. So forewords are usually short 1 or 2 pages of written text, usually by someone who has some clout, has a bit of fan base and following, whose opinion matters or matters more or is interesting, or someone that's just a darn good reader, or excuse me, darn good writer, and is known to and you know will provide something that's entertaining for your fans to read as a sort of kickoff to your book. We actually were, it was cool enough that we were able to snag Brian Edward Hill. He's written for DC, done Batman and the Outsiders. He's written for the Titans TV show that on the DC channel, and I believe I just saw that he is penning the next Power Rangers movie, which is pretty darn cool. But Brian Edward Hill is a friend of Joe and Rich, and he wrote the foreword for Wailing Blade, and so that's an opportunity to get in front of another market, you know, and another person's audience. All right. For Sync, this is Sync by John Lees and Alex Cormack. Frank Quitely wrote the foreword for Sync. Frank just happens to live or be from the Glasgow area of Scotland, which Wailing Blade is set in, and was a fan of the book and was open to writing it. And so that was like a massive steal for us. But you know, you don't need to get a superstar to write your forward. If you have someone that's a peer that writes good work, adding a forward to your trade collection can be just another reason and another thing to highlight as extra value for it. All right. So number 6 on my content list is that you can do remastered content. All right. Remastered content. What do I mean by remastered content? Well, the nice thing about making comics, right? You know, it's sort of, there's that art, there's that saying that art is never finished. It's just abandoned. And I'm sure we've all had that feeling, you know, and we've all had that feeling when we go and we do our best work, we collect our things, we print up our single issues, and then we see something that we just don't like in our single issues. I remember the very first comic I printed at my dad's, I was, probably 12 years old, printed it at my dad's office, just used his photocopy machine, printed up like a dozen copies, and I got it home and realized that I had drawn my thumb, I had drawn a hand backwards. So like instead of the thumb being here, it was over here, like and I didn't capture it, and I was like, oh man, like this is awful. Like I drew a thumb backwards. What I ended up doing was like literally white outing the whole thing and then redrawing it and then going back and ditching those copies, wasting more of my stepdad's paper. Sorry, Mike, and reprinting it again. But what taking your book to a trade collection gives you the opportunity to do is to remaster some content. And so that might be relettering. I know a lot of creators, when they're working on their first issues, they're just happy to get the thing lettered, but don't actually have a true appreciation of what the art of comic book lettering and how much lettering can bring to a book. And so they see that, so that, as you go further along and get better, you start seeing the mistakes that you made early on. Well, the graphic novel collection will give you an opportunity to go back and maybe reletter a book. Recoloring a book would be an example of that. We actually had the first opening sequence of Wailing Blade was colored by Jules Rivera. She couldn't stay on for the entire book. We ended up having Chris Sotomayor coming in, and he colored the entire series, but we never went in and recolored that first sequence. And Chris said, you know what, I just want to recolor that sequence, give it one cohesive look. And so our trade collection will include the remastered, recolored by Chris Sotomayor for the first 5-page or 6-page sequence. So that's something that happens. Or in some cases, maybe your book was black and white and you're coloring it for the first time. I know Darren from the Killaroo book. That was a book that has been very popular. He's had a number of successful Kickstarter launches in black and white. His last launch was for a color version, and the whole book was colored, looked amazing, and that just gave him another option to launch the book. Honestly, the cool thing is you can actually go the other version, that you can go the other way as well, right? If your book was always colored, what we did what we did 2 years ago was on Black Friday, we launched a black and white version of Sync number 6 as our Black Friday exclusive sale, and sold, several $1,000s, I think, worth of a Black Friday black and white edition of Sync book. But you can do that, maybe a black and white version of your series makes sense. All right, that's another way to sort of remaster the content. And the other thing that you could do would be to polish up your script. Most writers I know, your early comics are probably overwritten and may have a typo or two in them. And maybe your single issues were overwritten and had a typo or two. And so in addition to, maybe giving the lettering a polish, maybe that script, you want to smooth that out. Maybe a character, you didn't find the character's voice until issue 4 or 5, and you just want to smooth that out and remaster your content. And that can be another way that you can add value to your trade collection. All right. So what's the step above and beyond remastering content? Well, that would be adding extra comic pages. All right. Now, this is something that Rob Moltari did on his recent Nightwolf launch, where he chose to add extra scenes, one 4-page extra scene to every issue of his collected edition. I thought that was really cool. These were basically scenes that he had that were sort of on the cutting room floor. And so for the trade collection, let's add an extra scene, sort of in continuity, so that it makes sense, so that just adds to each of and makes the reading experience, it's kind of a new experience. So even if you read all of the single issues, there's actually, going to be a new experience to read those with those extra scenes inserted. We're seeing people get thrilled about, I think, what is it, 4 minutes of extra content for the Snyder Cut or something, or 4 minutes of extra that they filmed, or maybe who knows exactly what's going to come on there. But the idea that there's more, there's new, there's extra, like that gives people a new entry point, a new reason to jump in. And the other thing that I really like to do, and I've done with most of our trade collections, is I love the concept, and I blatantly stole this from your Marvels and your DCs, the idea of the after the credits scene. All right. And so what this is basically the last, what I've done for many trade collections, including Scam. We're going to do this for Wailing Blade as well. But after all the content, all the back matter, everything that we have, after the afterword even, I like to end it with more comics. And so we did for Scam, like, let's see what we do. This was a 4-page afterword that sort of set things up, left a nice teaser, and just let things on a high note. That usually doesn't happen. That's like usually, the back matter is sort of, all right, maybe I'll read that, maybe I won't. I love the idea of someone buying the book, enjoying it, reading it, and then kind of leafing through the back matter. Okay, checking out these pinups. Maybe I'll read the script, or maybe I'll skip pinup, and then boom, hey, wait a minute, what's this? And then check back in. I just love that experience as a reader myself, and I want to create that same. I enjoy it. I'm someone that sits through the credits as well to get to that extra scene, even if it's just something small and quick. And so I like that experience. I like to create that experience in my comics as well. And so one of the things that that we're doing in the Wailing Blade is that we decided to add a after the credit scene that's going to actually feature 2 more executioners. So there's in the world of the Wailing Blade, there's 7 executioners that sort of are like circuit judges. They're responsible for all of the executions in certain geographic locations. In the pages of the Wailing Blade miniseries, it was really about the conflict between the head taker and the bone breaker. But we introduce in the after the credits scene 2 new executioners that we're really excited about, and so that's a reason for fans to come back and grab this, because there's additional content above and beyond what they already experienced. And so if you're a completist like me, you got to get the trade collection to get that full experience. All right, and so another version of the extra comic pages, or the extra or just extra content in general, is creating anthology comic content. Okay, what do I mean by anthology style comic content? Well, and the thing about anthologies is they sort of widen the net and widen the number of creators that are contributing to the book. All right. And an anthology is it's around an idea, and it includes different creative teams. What Rob did, which I thought was very clever, and I'm not just saying that because I was one of the people that he reached out to, but that was probably the smartest move you made, Rob. What Rob did was, for those 4 extra scenes that he did for each issue, he actually recruited 4 different writers to write those scenes. He provided all of us with an outline, just a short couple of sentence outline. It was really sort of left open, and then invited the writers to write those scenes, and then had his artist that works on the regular series draw those scenes up. But by including those 4 different writers, that's 4 different creators and writers audiences that he can appeal to with this new launch. Thought that was very smart. We did that with this book, the Scam Ultimate Collection. In addition to containing the full 5 issues of Wailing Blade, it also included a scamthology of 11 brand new, never before released short stories of create by a bunch of either already superstar or up and coming creative teams, that were basically telling superpowered con man stories. Scam is a story of a superpowered con man, or a team of superpowered con men. It's sort of like Ocean's 11 meets the X-Men. And so for the Scamthology, we asked a whole bunch, 11 different creative teams to use scam characters and the idea of a superpowered heist or a superpowered con, and just tell short stories in the scam universe. And so that was an additional feature that bumped the page count of this volume up to like 256 pages. All right. And again, the real value of that anthology content is that now you're making it so that you're appealing to, like, you're incorporating the audiences of a whole lot more people. It's one of the reasons why many of the creators, or many of the biggest projects that really launch and pop and get big time backer counts are anthology projects. It's you know what, you're reaching you're casting a wide net and getting a lot of creators involved, and that makes it a little bit easier on a promotional side of things. All right, so that's anthology content. What we're doing, and then the next thing that I want to say is another option that we can have, and this is one that I think is probably underutilized by comic creators, is that you can include prose content into your graphic novel collections. Now, one of the challenges with anthology content or extra comic pages or other things is that it's expensive, right? It's time consuming. Every page of art, every page of comic art requires, 35 man hours between writing and penciling and inking and coloring and lettering and then proofing and all of that. Like, it's a lot of work to produce extra pages of content in comics. It's far less work to produce prose content. And so, what I love doing, and what we've done in Sync, we've done in the Red 10 collections, and we're doing in the Wailing Blade collection, is we're doing prose content, which are short stories, sort of written in prose, that are stories that take place in your world, add context, add flavor, add a sense of immersion, but don't require the investment that comic book art does. Now, what we decided to do for Wailing Blade was we asked, I think, a dozen writers to come up with an idea or a concept for what's the origin story behind the Wailing Blade and why does it wail? All right. The concept is this is like ancient technology in a dark future age, and no one exactly knows where the Wailing Blade comes from, but anywhere you go, everybody has a theory. Every town, every tavern, you're going to hear a different story about the origin of the Wailing Blade and why it wails. And so we asked a bunch of different writers and artists, or a bunch of different writers, to write those short stories. Now, because we are comics fans, because we are visual, and because we love art ourselves, we also then took those prose stories and asked a dozen artists to match those stories with a pinup piece that we can pair right next to that story to really give it some flavor and just add an extra bit of visual flair to the Wailing Blade collection. And so that's another thing that you can do. Like that's sort of splitting the difference between going all the way and doing more comic book pages, more comic book content, and versus just doing prose. You can sort of split the difference and do anthology and do an anthology content that includes prose and art. What that also did is it got us to get more artists involved, which we love to do. All right, so there you have it. There are 9 right there, ideas that you can do to add extra value from a content perspective to your trade and graphic novel collections. And so I've given you a total of 12 ideas already, but I spent 2 years in New Orleans. It was very sad to hear that Mardi Gras is canceled this year for, I think, like the first time ever, unfortunately, but obviously with COVID, it makes sense. But, I lived 2 years in New Orleans. They have this concept of the lagniappe, or the little something extra, the 13th donut, if you will, and the 13th bagel. And so what I wanted to give you is one extra tip for adding value to your trade collections. And this is that you can, in your trade collections, include something extra that you are tipping in. Okay. What do I mean tipping in? I mean like something that is inserted into the book. It's not a part of the book itself, but it's an insert into the book. It could be a mini print. It could be a bookmark. It could be a postcard. It could be stickers. It could be a signed sketch plate. It could be a sketch, something that you would tip in. Now, unlike the signed sketch plates and the like the sketches, for everything else, mini prints, bookmarks, postcards, stickers, my number one recommendation for you is that something that you actually want to, if it's an option with your printer, have them do that at the printer, have them do that at the factory. All right. So if you know, let's say you have a stretch goal and it's that you're going to add mini prints to everybody's pledge, or let's say you're going to add bookmarks to everybody's pledge, or postcards, as a stretch goal upgrade. This is something that's very common for Kickstarter. My recommendation to do for you, if you can do it, is don't make that something that you're going to go print by a separate vendor and then manually add on yourself. If you can do it, have your printer take care of that. And the reason you want to do this is a couple reasons. First, it's probably actually going to be cheaper. All right. Now, yes, bookmarks are pretty cheap to print by just about every vendor's, but when you're printing one bookmark and you're doing it for every book, you're probably going to use offset printing. And you're probably doing it at volume. In a lot of cases, if you're doing it overseas, it's usually going to be pretty cheap. And so you'll have them do that there. It will also save you time, right? It'll save you time, and you can have the vendor just insert it. So for example, we had a stretch goal upgrade that everyone got a double-sided bookmark if they backed She. And we basically told our printer that we wanted on this page, we could tell them exactly where we wanted this inserted. We told them we wanted it inserted between the white page at the end and the last page. And so every single copy of She has that bookmark in there. All right. We've also done this in the past with postcards and prints, but we do it at the factory. Now, the factory then will insert it for us, and they will shrink wrap and then protect it and store it. Now, what's nice about the shrink wrapping is that not only will the book itself be protected, but you will also not run there will be no risk for you to get dinged for the media mail exception. A lot of us, you may or may not be aware, but in the US, there's a rate called media mail, which you can use for books. But if you throw in additional promotional material, technically you're not allowed to use the media mail rate. And the media mail rate can be up to 50% or more off what it would be to send it another way, especially depending upon the size and the weight of your package. But if you've got a bookmark, but it's shrink wrapped in the book, you know what? Nobody is going to, even if they open up your thing, they're not going to open up the shrink wrap to inspect it. And so that's an additional way to do it. And then the last thing that will also give you is that wherever you go on and sell this book, this becomes a value add that you can sell. So if you're at the convention, you can mention, hey, and if people are on the fence, you can say, and guess what? There's even a custom bookmark in there. There's even a print or a fold out poster, etc. In that book. It's a little upsell. Or if they buy it on Amazon, or if they buy it at your local comic shop and they get there and they open it up, that's a little bit of a surprise extra that they might not even know was coming. And so for all of those reasons, I do love the extra tip in as an idea right there. All right. So there you have it. We rocked this for about an hour, one of my longest live streams in a while, but I hope you got some value from this. I came on here with the idea to give you a dozen ways to add value to your trade collections so that even fans that have every issue will back them again. Now, Do you need to do all dozen of these in every trade you do? Absolutely not. I don't. But pick a combination that makes a lot of sense for you. And so again, just to review those dozen, first, having a spine itself adds value. You can add value by changing the size of your book. You can use specialty cover enhancements and features such as foil, spot UV, virgin variants, wraparound covers, dust jackets, or doing a die cut or any combination thereof. Then those are the format things that you can do. You can also use content. You can include the complete story volume. That's value add. Cover galleries, pinups and sketches, script and process materials. You can have a forward. You can include remastered content such as relettering, recoloring, or script polishing. You can include extra pages. You can include extra scenes within the book itself. You can also include an after the credits scene. You can even go so far as to add anthology content and include other creators involved. And it doesn't all need to be comics. You can also add prose content, which add a lot of value to your books. And my final piece of advice there was that if you're going to you can tip in extra things like mini prints, bookmarks, postcards, stickers. And if you can do that at the factory, you're actually going to make it probably a lot more easier for yourself and a lot more cost effective in the long run. So hope that helps. Hope you enjoyed this session. Again, if you got value from this stuff, would love to have you as one of our backers over at Wailing Blade. comicstribe.com/Wailing Blade is where you can get the campaign. We'll be rocking it all the way until midnight on Friday night. I think the boys are planning a closing ceremonies party on Friday night. So we will probably be back live streaming then as well. But let me know if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, if you have any ideas that came from this for your next trade collection. Would love to hear those in the comments, and I will follow up with you there. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see what you launch next.